Rain poured softly against the glass walls of Orion Station, a floating city between stars. The neon lights of alien shops flickered in the misty air, glowing blue and green through the smoke. The streets were alive with noise, traders shouting in strange languages, robots buzzing past, and the smell of burned oil mixed with food that no human could name. Jake Renner, a tired cargo worker, walked through the market with his jacket pulled tight. He had just finished a long shift unloading fuel cells and only wanted one thing: a cheap meal. His stomach growled as he passed a dozen food stalls, but tonight prices were high. Even a small pack of protein meat cost more than he earned in a day. Jake sighed. "Guess I'll just grab whatever's cheapest," he muttered to himself. That's when he noticed a dimly lit corner stall, half hidden behind crates and steam pipes. The sign above it flashed in broken English. Fresh organic meat, rare quality, cheap. A strange-looking vendor stood there, tall, thin, with 4 fingers on each hand and small black eyes that never blinked. His voice came out smooth and cold. "You want good meat, human? Very soft, very fresh. Special price tonight." Jake hesitated. The vendor's grin made him uneasy, but hunger pushed him forward. "How much for a kilo?" The alien leaned closer, whispering, 50 credits. "Comes with bonus." "Bonus?" Jake frowned. "What kind of bonus?" The vendor only smiled wider. "You'll see." He pointed to a metal container sealed tight with glowing locks and a red tag that read, "Live, do not open." Jake laughed. "Is that meat?" "Best kind," the alien said quickly, sliding the container forward. "Still fresh. You take now, no questions." Jake checked the tag again, but his stomach answered before his brain did. "Fine," he said, tossing the credits onto the table. The vendor's black eyes glittered. "Pleasure doing business, human." Jake lifted the container, heavier than he expected, and started walking back toward his small apartment unit. The market noises faded behind him, replaced by the hum of the station's main corridor. But something felt off. Every few steps he thought he heard a faint sound from inside the box. A soft thump, then a whisper. He stopped. Probably air pressure, he told himself, trying to sound calm. Or maybe it's just cooling down. Still the sound came again, this time clearer. Tap, 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 like fingers knocking from inside. Jake walked faster. The lights above him flickered as he entered the residential zone. His heart began to race. He placed the container down outside his door and listened closely. The tapping stopped. He exhaled, shaking his head. "I'm going crazy," he muttered, unlocking his door. Inside, his room was small. Just a bed, a heater, and an old cooking unit. He dropped his bag and pulled the container inside. Curiosity burned stronger than fear now. He stared at the red tag, "Live, do not open," and laughed nervously. What kind of meat comes alive? He grabbed a small knife and gently tapped the seal. A hiss of air escaped. The container vibrated slightly, then he heard it. A tiny voice, "Please, don't hurt us." Jake froze. His knife slipped from his hand, hitting the floor. What the hell? He leaned closer. The voice came again, trembling but clear. "Please, don't sell us." His hands shook as he opened the final lock. The lid lifted slowly, and a soft blue light filled the room. Inside were 2 small figures curled together like frightened animals. They looked human, almost, but their skin shimmered silver blue under the light. Their hair glowed faintly and their eyes were large and bright like polished metal. Jake stepped back in shock. You're not meat." One of them, the older-looking one, reached out a small hand. "No, we are sisters." He was going to sell us. Jake's heart pounded in his chest. The room suddenly felt too small, too quiet. He looked toward the door, half expecting security to burst in. You can talk?" The younger one nodded shyly. "We learned. We listen." Jake ran a hand through his hair, trying to think. "Oh man, what did I just buy?" Outside, somewhere in the distance, alarms began to echo through the station halls. The older sister looked up, fear in her eyes. "They're coming," she whispered. "They found us." Jake's gaze snapped toward the window, where flashing red lights now lit the market streets far below. He didn't know who they were, but something told him he was in deep trouble. He turned back to the sisters. "All right," he said quietly. "You're safe here. For now." The older one tilted her head. "You help us?" Jake hesitated, then nodded. "Yika, I guess I do." The camera would zoom slowly on the glowing eyes of the sisters and the faint reflection of Jake's worried face. The room was quiet, but Jake's heartbeat was loud enough to fill it. The two small alien girls sat close together on his bed, their silver blue skin shining softly in the dim light. Their glowing eyes moved carefully, studying every corner of the room, every sound, every breath. Jake didn't move for a long time. He stood near the wall trying to make sense of what he was seeing. He had bought meat, not two living beings that could speak. Finally, he found his voice. Who are you?" The older one looked at him with calm, sad eyes. "I am Lyra," she said quietly. She placed her arm around the younger one. "This is my sister, Noma." Noma looked frightened, her small hand shaking. She whispered something in a language Jake didn't understand. Lyra replied softly in the same tongue, comforting her like an older sister would. Jake rubbed his head. "You speak English? How?" Lyra tilted her head slightly. "We learn fast. We listen to broadcasts, voices, broadcasts." Jake frowned. "You mean station radio?" She nodded slowly. "Many voices, many lies. But we learned enough." Jake didn't know what to say. He stepped closer, noticing faint marks on their wrists, metal scars like they had been chained. The thought made him feel sick. "What happened to you?" he asked. Lyra's voice became cold. "We were sold. Again and again. Hunters catch us, sell us to others. They say we are nothing, just food." Jake clenched his fists. "You're not food." "Not to me." Noma looked up at him then, her big eyes full of fear and confusion. "You help?" she asked, her voice trembling. Jake hesitated. Helping them meant breaking the law. Station security didn't care about truth. They only cared about order. If he was caught hiding illegal life forms, he'd be thrown out of the airlock before morning. But as he looked at the sisters, small and scared, he couldn't walk away. "Yeah," he said finally. "I'll help you, but we have to move fast." Outside, the faint hum of alarms echoed through the corridors. Lyra's head turned toward the sound immediately. "They search for us." Jake opened his storage box and started pulling out clothes. "We'll hide you here for now. I'll figure something out." Lyra shook her head. "They smell energy." "Our signal." Jake stopped. "Signal?" The sisters exchanged a nervous glance. Lyra lifted her hand. A small crystal embedded in her skin glowed faintly. "They track us by this. It is inside us since birth." Jake stared at the glowing crystal. "Can you remove it?" She shook her head. "It hurts. Too deep." Noma shivered, whispering something to her sister again. Lyra hugged her tightly. "Don't be afraid," she whispered in her own language. Jake felt a sudden rush of protectiveness. He didn't know why. Maybe it was the fear in Noma's eyes or the calm sadness in Lyra's voice. Whatever it was, he knew he couldn't let them get caught. He opened the window shutter and looked outside. Down in the marketplace, flashing red lights painted the streets. Drones were flying low, scanning every door. "They're close," Jake said. "We can't stay here." Lyra stood up. Her small figure looked fragile, but her voice was firm. "Then we run." Jake grabbed his jacket. "You can't just walk out there looking like that. Everyone will notice." He pulled two old maintenance cloaks from the corner and handed them over. "Here, wear these." The sisters wrapped themselves in the rough fabric. Noma smiled shyly, the first time she had since he met her. "Thank you," she whispered. Jake smiled back. "Don't thank me yet." He opened the door slightly and peered into the corridor. Empty and for now. He motioned for them to follow. "Stay close and stay quiet." They moved quickly through the narrow halls, past the flickering lights and the smell of machine oil. Every sound made Jake's nerves jump. The whir of a cleaning drone, the distant shout of security. As they turned a corner, a scanner drone suddenly hovered in front of them, red light blinking. Jake froze. Lyra stepped forward before he could react. She raised her hand and for a brief second her eyes flashed white. The drone sparked, let out a high-pitched noise and dropped to the ground dead. Jake stared in shock. "What did you just do?" Lyra lowered her hand slowly. "I made it sleep." He looked at the broken drone. "That's not sleep." Noma giggled softly for the first time and Lyra gave a small smile. "Then I made it dream," she said. Jake shook his head, half amazed, half terrified. "You're full of surprises." They continued moving through the shadows until they reached an old cargo lift. Jake entered a code and the door creaked open. Inside was an abandoned storage deck. Dark, dusty, and forgotten. "This place isn't safe," Jake said, "but it'll do for the night." The sisters sat down together on an old blanket. Noma rested her head on Lyra's shoulder. Jake looked at them. Two lost children from another world, hunted and alone. Something inside him changed at that moment. He knew this wasn't just about helping them escape anymore. Something bigger was happening. Something that could shake everything he thought he knew about aliens and humans. Outside, the alarms grew louder. Jake whispered to himself, "What have I gotten into?" The lights of Orion Station turned red. Sirens echoed through every corridor like thunder. The loud voice of security bots filled the air. Containment breach. Illegal life forms detected. All citizens remain indoors. Jake stood near the window of the dark storage deck, watching drones sweep across the marketplace below. He felt his stomach twist. The sisters were sitting quietly behind him, their silver-blue faces glowing faintly in the shadows. "They're searching every block," Jake whispered. "They'll reach this sector in minutes." Lyra didn't answer. She was holding her sister close, her eyes fixed on the blinking lights outside. Noma trembled, whispering, "They find us soon, Lyra." "They always find us." Jake turned toward them. "Not this time," he said firmly. "We're getting out of here." He opened a metal case on the floor, not his old cargo gear from work. Inside were small oxygen masks, a scanner, and his old ID card. He handed the sisters the masks. "Put these on. They'll hide your heat signatures from drones." "I hope." Lyra looked at him. "You risk too much," Jake smirked. "Yeah, that's kind of my thing." He led them through the narrow maintenance tunnel behind the storage bay. The air was thick with dust and the floor shook under the rumble of machines. Somewhere above, the hum of patrol engines grew louder. As they walked, Noma's small voice broke the silence. "Why you help us, human?" Jake paused. "Because you needed help," he said simply. "And because no one else would." Noma smiled softly. "Then you're a strange human," Jake chuckled. "You have no idea." They moved deeper through the tunnels, passing leaking pipes and flickering lights. Suddenly, Lyra stopped. Her head turned sharply to the side. "They're here," she whispered. Jake frowned. "How do you know?" Before he could finish, a beam of red light shot across the tunnel wall. A drone appeared from the shadows, followed by armored guards. "Target located," a metallic voice shouted. "Non-human entities detected." Jake grabbed the sisters and ran. Bullets of plasma burned the walls around them. The air smelled like melted metal. "This way," he shouted, diving into a side passage. They ran through the maze of pipes, the sound of pursuit echoing behind them. Jake's heart pounded. Not from fear, but from determination. He wasn't going to lose them. Not now. Lyra looked back and stretched her hand. A wave of bright white light burst from her palm, blinding the drones. The air shimmered, and for a moment everything went silent. When the light faded, the guards were stumbling, their helmets cracked. Jake turned in awe. "Remind me never to make you angry," he said breathlessly. Lyra didn't smile. "We must move before they wake." They reached a rusty maintenance ladder leading upward. Jake climbed first, his muscles aching. Lyra followed, pulling Noma close behind her. At the top, Jake pushed open a hatch and cold air rushed in. They were on the outer edge of the market dome, surrounded by towering glass walls and endless stars. For a brief moment, the view was breathtaking. The planet below glowed green and blue, and ships passed like silver birds through the void. But there was no time to enjoy it. Drones were already swarming above, their searchlights cutting through the mist. Jake spotted an old cargo tram parked near the wall. "That's our ride," he said. They sprinted across the walkway. A drone spotted them. Its alarm screamed through the air. Jake pulled a small blaster from his belt, something he hadn't used since his smuggling days. He fired. The bolt hit the drone, sending it spinning into the air. "Go!" he shouted. Lyra and Noma jumped into the tram. Jake followed, slamming the hatch shut behind him. The tram roared to life, speeding down the metal track that ran along the outer rim of the station. Through the glass, he could see dozens of patrol ships lifting off. Noma held Lyra's hand tightly. "They still come," Jake grinned. "Then let's give them a race." He switched the tram into manual mode, overriding the system. Sparks flew as it picked up speed. Behind them, small explosions lit the tunnel as drones tried to block their way. The tram shook violently. A warning light flashed on the control panel. "Overload imminent." Lyra's eyes glowed faintly. "I can help." She pressed her hand against the engine core. The lights flickered, then stabilized. The tram surged forward faster than it was ever meant to go. Whatever you did, Jake said, gripping the controls, don't stop doing it. Outside, the security forces fell behind. The tram burst through the final checkpoint, smashing through a glass barrier and diving into an abandoned docking tunnel. Sparks flew. Metal screamed. Then silence. They had stopped. Jake exhaled, shaking. We made it. Lyra looked at him seriously. No, we escaped. But they will come again. Jake wiped sweat from his forehead. Then we find a place where they can't. Noma looked up. Where will we go? Jake smiled faintly. I know someone. A mechanic friend. He owes me a favor. Lyra studied his face. You trust him? Jake hesitated. I used to. She nodded slowly. Then we will trust you. As the camera pulls back, the three figures sit in the broken tram, the stars outside shining like cold fire. The station sirens echo in the distance, fading into silence. The old docking tunnel was silent now. Only the sound of cooling metal filled the air after their wild escape. Sparks flickered in the shadows like dying stars. Jake sat against the wall, catching his breath. His hands were shaking, his face streaked with sweat and dust. Across from him, Lyra and Noma huddled together, whispering in their soft musical language. For a few minutes, nobody spoke. The weight of what had just happened hung heavy between them. Finally, Jake broke the silence. All right, he said quietly. No more running blind. I need to know what's going on. Lyra looked up, her silver blue skin glowing faintly under the dim light. You wouldn't believe if we told you. Try me, Jake replied, his voice firm. Noma looked at her sister nervously. Lyra, maybe he should not. He helped us, Lyra interrupted gently. He deserves truth. Jake leaned forward. Truth would be nice right about now. Lyra stood, moving closer to him. Her eyes were deep and bright like liquid metal. We are not what you think, Jake Renner. We are not children. We are not even born the way humans are. Jake frowned. What do you mean? Lyra's voice grew softer. We were made, created? Yes, long ago our kind, the Syrians, were masters of light and mind. They built worlds that floated between stars, but power made them blind. They began experiments, trying to design the perfect being, one that could heal, adapt, and survive any planet. Noma hugged her knees, whispering, We were those creations. Jake's mouth went dry. You're saying you were built in a lab? Lyra nodded. Made to carry the memories of our creators, to keep their history alive. But something went wrong. The humans found them and destroyed them. Jake blinked. Humans? You mean? Yes, Lyra said quietly. Your kind. For a moment, the world around him seemed to stop. The hum of the tunnel faded. Jake felt a cold sting in his chest. That's impossible. Humans aren't like that. Lyra tilted her head sadly. Maybe not now. But they were once different. Warriors, conquerors of galaxies. The Syrians feared them, until they learned too late that humans fear themselves even more. Jake stood up, pacing. So, that's why they were selling you as meat? Because we are what's left, Lyra finished, and the wrong people want to erase us completely. Noma's voice was small. They call us errors. Jake turned to look at them. The truth hit him harder than he expected. They weren't just two lost girls. They were living proof of something ancient, something dangerous. He rubbed his temples. So the vendor, he was trying to hide the evidence? Yes, Lyra said. He worked for the Consortium of Purity. They clean what they call genetic trash. To them, we are waste. Jake clenched his fists. That's sick. Lyra studied him carefully. You still help us, even after knowing what we are? Jake met her gaze. You're alive. You can think, feel, laugh, fear, and that's what matters. You're not waste. Noma smiled weakly. You sound like our teacher. Teacher? Jake asked. She was one of the scientists who made us, Lyra said softly. She hid us when they came to destroy the lab. She said, if you ever find humans again, look for the ones who still have heart. Then, she died. Jake felt a lump in his throat. He looked at them and saw not aliens but survivors. Lyra continued, her tone turning serious. The device inside us, the one that tracks us, it was also part of our design. It connects us to each other. And to something else. Something sleeping. Jake's brows furrowed. Something else? She looked toward the ceiling. A beacon. A ship buried deep under the planet's surface. Our creators built it as their final hope. If we can reach it, it can take us away from here. Jake crossed his arms. You mean there's an ancient alien ship hidden under the planet? Yes, Lyra said. But we cannot reach it alone. The signal that leads to it is fading. Only a human system can decode it. Jake realized what she meant. You want my help? Lyra nodded. Your ship codes, your access, your hands. He sighed. You're asking me to steal from the station again. That'll make me public enemy number 1. Noma looked at him with wide eyes. You already are, Jake Renner. He laughed quietly. Fair point. The moment of humor faded quickly as the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the tunnel. Jake's hand went to his blaster instantly. Lyra's expression turned cold. They found us. Jake peered through a crack in the door. Security drones were moving down the main corridor, scanning each room with blue light. They're using heat sensors, he whispered. We can't stay here. Lyra grabbed Noma's hand. Then we moved. Jake nodded. I know a place we can hide, my old friend Thomas. He runs the junkyard decks. He won't ask questions. Lyra stared at him, searching his face for any sign of doubt. Finally, she said, We trust you, Jake, but if you betray us... Jake smirked. You'll make me dream, right? For the first time, Lyra smiled. Maybe forever. They slipped quietly into the shadows, the red emergency lights flashing behind them. The chase was far from over but now Jake knew the truth. He wasn't just protecting two strangers. He was standing between humanity's dark past and its only chance at redemption. The junkyard deck smelled of rust and smoke. Old ship parts floated in the low gravity, bumping softly into one another like ghosts of forgotten machines. Jake guided the sisters through the maze of broken engines and metal scraps. This place looks dead, Noma whispered. Jake grinned faintly. That's why it's perfect. Nobody looks for life in a graveyard. They reached a small workshop built inside the shell of a ruined freighter. Its lights flickered weakly and the air buzzed with old machinery. Inside, a man was working on a half-disassembled drone. Thomas, Jake called softly. The man turned, tall, bearded, with mechanical goggles covering his eyes. His hands froze when he saw Jake. Well, if it isn't the ghost of bad decisions, Jake smirked. Nice to see you too. Thomas walked closer, wiping oil from his fingers. You're supposed to be working in Cargo Bay 12, not sneaking through restricted decks. Jake hesitated. I need your help. I need a ship. Thomas raised an eyebrow. A ship? You planning a vacation or running from someone again? Before Jake could answer, Lyra and Noma stepped into the light. Their silver-blue glow filled the room. Thomas's smile faded. What in the void are they? Friends, Jake said firmly. And trouble. I'll explain later. I just need something that flies. Tomas sighed, rubbing his head. You always bring storms with you, Jake. Fine, I've got an old freighter, the Starling. She's slow, but she'll move. As they walked toward the dock, a loud boom shook the entire junkyard. Alarms blared. Outside, flashes of blue light filled the air. Lyra turned sharply. They found us again. Jake cursed under his breath. They're faster than I thought. Thomas ran to the control panel, his fingers flying over the keys. Security drones, hundreds of them. They've locked the exits. Jake grabbed Lyra's hand. Get on the Starling, now! They sprinted across the metal bridge. Drones swarmed from above, red lights flashing like angry eyes. Plasma bolts burned through the air. One hit the bridge behind them, exploding in a shower of sparks. Noma screamed as Jake pulled her forward. Keep running! They reached the ship. A battered freighter with cracked armor and a humming engine core. Jake jumped into the cockpit, flipping switches desperately. Come on. The engine coughed, groaned, and then roared to life. The Starling lifted off, shaking as it broke free from the docking clamps. Thomas's voice came through the comms. You've got about 30 seconds before the station's defense grid locks onto you. You better fly like hell, Jake. Jake grinned. Flying like hell is my specialty. The Starling shot out of the junkyard, weaving between floating wreckage. Drones followed in tight formation, firing plasma bursts that lit the blackness of space like fireworks. Jake's hands danced over the controls. Hold on! The ship dove sharply, engines screaming. Noma held onto her sister as they were pushed back by the force. Too fast, Lyra shouted. Not fast enough, Jake replied. A missile streaked past, exploding nearby. The shockwave rocked the ship. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Jake's eyes darted across the radar. We're surrounded. Lyra closed her eyes. Her body began to glow faintly, and the lights in the cockpit flickered. I can confuse their sensors. But not for long. Jake nodded. Do it. A wave of blue light pulsed from her hands, spreading across the ship's surface. The radar lit up with static. Outside, the drones spun in confusion, losing their target. Jake seized the moment. Engaging hyperdrive. He slammed the lever forward. The stars stretched into long white lines, and the Starling jumped into hyperspace, leaving the chaos behind. For a moment, everything was silent. Just the low hum of the engine and the faint breathing of the three souls inside. Jake leaned back, exhausted. We made it, but Lyra didn't look relieved. Her glow dimmed. No, the signal follows us. The tracker inside me still speaks to them. Jake frowned. Then we'll cut it out. She shook her head. If you remove it, I die. It's tied to my heart. Jake's chest tightened. Then we find another way. Lyra gave him a tired smile. You are strange, Jake Renner. You act like we matter. Jake looked at her seriously. You do. Noma leaned forward, eyes wide. Jake, what is that? He turned to the window. A dark shape was forming ahead, huge, silent, and cold. A fleet of black ships drifting in the darkness. Jake's stomach dropped. That's not station security. Lyra's eyes widened. Consortium hunters. They wait for us. A deep voice crackled through the radio. Unregistered vessel. You are carrying stolen property. Power down or be destroyed. Jake's jaw clenched. Not today. He flipped the weapon system online. The old freighter groaned in protest. You two better hang on. Noma looked scared. Jake, we can't fight them. He smiled. We don't need to fight. We just need to outsmart them. He shut off the main lights, cutting the engines for a brief moment. The ship drifted silently into a field of floating rocks, an asteroid belt glowing with blue crystals. The hunters followed, their sensors sweeping. Jake whispered, Let's see how good their aim is in a storm. He reignited the engines, firing between the spinning asteroids. Lasers cut through the darkness, explosions flashing like lightning. Lyra placed her hand on the controls. I can bend the light around us. Make us disappear for a moment. Jake looked at her in awe. Do it. The ship shimmered, vanishing into the glittering chaos of the asteroid field. The hunters fired blindly, hitting only rocks. Jake grinned. You're full of miracles, Lyra. She smiled faintly. Not miracles. Survival. The Starling drifted quietly through the wreckage, safe for now. The Starling floated silently in the cold dark of space. The storm of glowing asteroids was behind them, but the air inside the ship was heavy, thick with exhaustion and quiet fear. Jake sat in the pilot's chair, staring at the blinking lights on the dashboard. Lyra and Noma were asleep in the back, wrapped in emergency blankets. For the first time in hours, there was peace, fragile, temporary peace. Jake's mind raced. He thought about everything Lyra had said, about humans, about the Syrians, about the past. Could it really be true, that humans once destroyed their creators? He didn't know. But what he did know was that the sisters didn't deserve to be hunted like animals. The ship's comm light suddenly flickered. A voice came through, cracked with static. Jake, you alive out there? Jake's heart jumped. Tomas? Yeah, it's me. You made it, didn't you? Jake exhaled with relief. Barely. The whole station's after us. Thomas chuckled weakly. You always did love trouble. Listen, I found a safe zone. An old mining outpost near the moon Vera 9. No scanners, no patrols. You can refuel there and hide. Jake smiled faintly. You're a lifesaver, Thomas. Just doing what friends do, Thomas replied. Send me your coordinates. I'll guide you in. Jake hesitated. Something in Thomas's voice felt off, too calm, too rehearsed, but he shook off the thought. Thomas had helped him before. He was rough around the edges, but loyal. All right, Jake said. Sending now. He keyed in the coordinates and turned on the autopilot. The engines hummed softly as the Starling shifted direction. Hours later, the ship approached a quiet moon. It was gray and lifeless, surrounded by a thin fog of ice and dust. On the surface, a small metal structure glowed dimly, the mining outpost Thomas had promised. Jake landed the Starling on the dusty ground. The engines powered down, leaving only the sound of the wind. He turned to the sisters. We're here. It's safe for now. Lyra opened her eyes slowly. Safe never lasts, Jake Renner. He forced a smile. You're too pessimistic, she tilted her head. Experience, not pessimism. Jake opened the hatch and stepped outside. The air was cold and still. The outpost looked abandoned, just a few metal domes and antennas half buried in dust. He tapped his communicator. Thomas, we're here. Where are you? Static. Then the familiar voice. Coming out to meet you. Stay put. Lyra stepped beside Jake, her silver blue skin glowing faintly in the gray light. I don't like this place, she murmured. Jake looked at her. You can sense things, can't you? She nodded slowly. Something wrong here, feels empty but watched. Before Jake could answer, a shadow appeared near the outpost door. Thomas walked toward them, his coat flapping in the wind. Jake smiled with relief. You really came through, man. Thomas smiled back, but his eyes didn't. Yeah, I always keep my promises. They walked inside the outpost. It was dim and silent. Old mining equipment lay scattered across the floor. A few lights flickered weakly. Thomas poured Jake a drink from a metal flask. You look half dead. Jake took it gratefully. Feels about right. Lyra and Noma stayed close together, eyes scanning the room. Jake noticed and laughed. Relax, Thomas is a good guy. He's helped me out before. Lyra didn't smile. Trust is a knife, she said softly. Sharp both ways. Jake frowned but said nothing. Suddenly the sound of engines roared outside. The ground shook, Lyra's head snapped up. Ships! Jake rushed to the window. Dark, sleek ships landing on the surface. The consortium's insignia glowed red on their sides. Jake's stomach dropped. No. He turned to Thomas, his voice tight. What did you do? Thomas didn't answer. He couldn't meet Jake's eyes. You called them, Jake whispered. You sold us out. Thomas swallowed hard. I had no choice, Jake. They found me. They said they'd erase my ID, freeze my accounts. I just had to give them your coordinates. That's all. Jake's hands trembled with anger. You didn't just sell me, Thomas. You sold them. Lyra stepped forward, her eyes glowing cold and bright. You trade lives for safety? Thomas took a step back, guilt written all over his face. I didn't think they were real. I thought they were just cargo. Cargo? Lyra's voice echoed like thunder. We are not your cargo. Outside, the soldiers were already surrounding the outpost. Their boots pounded the metal floor. Jake grabbed his blaster. We need to move, Thomas shouted. They won't hurt you if you surrender. Please, Jake. Jake glared at him. You don't know them like I do. He fired at the control panel, plunging the outpost into darkness. Alarms blared. Lyra grabbed Noma's hand, pulling her toward the back corridor. Jake, she shouted. He turned to Thomas one last time. You were my friend, Tomas's voice cracked. I still am. Jake hit him across the face with the butt of the blaster, knocking him out cold. Then stay down. They sprinted through the dark tunnels as gunfire erupted behind them. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Noma cried out as a blast hit nearby. Jake grabbed her, shielding her with his body. Keep going. They reached a small exit hatch and climbed into a service pod. Lyra slammed the door shut. The engines roared. Through the window, Jake saw the outpost explode in flames as the pod shot into the dark sky. Noma sobbed quietly. Lyra stared straight ahead, her face unreadable. Jake whispered, I'm sorry. Lyra didn't look at him. Don't be. He chose his path. Now we choose ours. The pod sped toward the stars, and behind them the hunters rose again, chasing. The stars drifted past like slow-moving ghosts. The small escape pod cut through the darkness, silent and scarred. Inside, Jake sat at the controls, his face lit only by the pale blue lights of the dashboard. Lyra and Noma sat behind him, wrapped in silence. None of them spoke for a long time. The betrayal still hung between them like a wound that wouldn't close. Jake finally whispered, We'll find somewhere safe. Lyra's voice was calm but empty. There is no safe, Jake Renner. Not for what we are, he turned toward her. Then we make one. For a moment their eyes met, human and alien, and something unspoken passed between them. Something that didn't belong to fear or hope, but to trust. A signal in the dark. Suddenly the ship's console beeped. A small red icon blinked on the screen. A signal. Jake frowned. What now? Lyra moved closer. It's the beacon, she said. The one our creators left behind. It's calling us, Noma's eyes widened. The ship under the planet? Lyra nodded. Yes, it wakes when we are near. Jake stared at the coordinates flashing on the display. The signal came from a planet just ahead, a world half covered in clouds and lightning storms. He muttered, "Looks like a death trap." Lyra placed her hand on the screen. "It's where it all began," Jake sighed. "And maybe where it ends." He steered the pod toward the planet. The engines roared softly as they entered its thick atmosphere. Clouds of silver dust and electric storms swallowed them whole. The lost world. The pod crashed through a layer of clouds and descended into a wide valley glowing with strange blue light. The ground below wasn't stone or soil. It pulsed softly like the surface of a living thing. They landed hard. Sparks flew, but the pod held together. Jake opened the hatch and stepped out. The air was thin and cold, but it shimmered with energy. Giant crystal pillars rose from the ground like frozen lightning. Lyra and Noma followed him, their silver-blue skin glowing even brighter. The planet seemed to react to them. The crystals around them hummed as if whispering welcome. Jake whispered, "This place is alive." "It remembers," Lyra said. "It remembers us." In the center of the valley stood a large structure half buried in light. A massive ship, ancient and silent, shaped like a sleeping beast. Its surface was covered with runes that glowed faintly when Lyra approached. She pressed her hand against the hull. The runes flared to life. "The Ark of Syra," she said softly. "The last ship our creators built before the end." Jake stared in awe. "It's beautiful." Lyra turned to him. "It needs a human to awaken it." Jake blinked. "Why me?" "Because," she said, stepping closer, "you carry the same code they once used. The same spark. You are not just descendant of humans, Jake Renner. You are descendant of them. Of the makers." Jake's heart skipped. "What are you saying?" Lyra's eyes shone like silver fire. Humanity was not their destroyer. It was their rebirth. When their empire fell, some of them hid among your ancestors. They became you. Jake took a step back. "That's impossible." Noma's small voice broke the silence. "Then why does the ship answer only you?" Jake looked down at his trembling hands. He remembered the times he'd felt things he couldn't explain. The strange connection, the way the sister's energy never scared him, only felt familiar. He swallowed hard. "What do I do?" Lyra placed his hand on the glowing panel. "You remember who you are." The awakening, the ground began to shake. The air filled with light as the ship came alive. Blue energy streamed from the crystals into the ark. The valley rumbled like a giant heartbeat returning after ages of silence. Jake's mind flooded with visions. Galaxies burning. Worlds reborn. Ancient voices whispering through time. He saw the Syrians, tall beings of light and wisdom. He saw them merging with early humans, hiding their legacy in human blood. And in that moment he understood. Humans weren't the destroyers of the Syrians. They were the children of them. The energy around him grew brighter until it was blinding. Lyra and Noma shielded their eyes as the great ship began to rise, dust swirling around them like a storm. The voice of the ark filled the air, soft and echoing. "Lineage recognized." "Rebirth complete," Jake gasped as the connection faded. He fell to his knees, breathing hard. Lyra rushed to him. "Jake?" He looked up at her, smiling weakly. "I saw them, Lyra. I saw your creators." "And mine." Tears shimmered in her metallic eyes. "Then we are not enemies," he shook his head. "No, we're family." The ark's doors opened with a thunderous sound, revealing a golden interior glowing with light. Jake helped Noma stand. "Let's go. The consortium will be here soon." They stepped inside together. The walls glowed brighter with every step they took. The ship's systems hummed to life. Outside, dark ships appeared in the clouds. The hunters closing in. Lyra turned to Jake. "Once we leave, we can never return." Jake smiled. "Wasn't planning to." He pressed his hand against the control sphere. The ship's engines roared. A blinding flash of light burst across the valley, and in an instant the Ark of Syra vanished into the stars.